Hello, my name is Barbara Goss and I'm the Mental Health Delivery Manager for the South East. And I'm here with my colleagues Katrina Lake and Fiona Rodden. Actually, I'll let them introduce themselves. Katrina, would you go first? Thanks.
Hi there. Hi. Yeah, my name's Katrina Lake. I work with Barbara and Fee in the Southeast team, Assistant Director for Programmes for Mental Health. Hi.
Hi Ruby, I'm Fee Rodden and my normal job is Head of Talent, but over COVID I've been leading some of the health and wellbeing work for looking after your people. So it's really lovely to have you with us today. Thank you.
So together we've been working on a number of activities to raise awareness and support NHS and social care staff with their mental health and well-being, as poor mental health of staff has been a significant issue pre and post COVID. So today we are so happy to have mental health campaigner, lecturer, presenter, author and OBE, Ruby Wax, with us to continue our conversation on this topic. So welcome, Ruby. We're so happy to have you. I'd just like to start with getting a bit of an understanding of your personal journey from sort of comedian, presenter, actress to mental health advocate. How did you sort of navigate your mental health?
I didn't really navigate, it was thrust upon me because I was doing a show at the BBC and I didn't want anybody to know that I had a mental health problem because that would mean I was fired. So I kept it really quiet and Ed kept saying, oh, she has Epstein-Barr, or, we'd make up names because it was, you couldn't show up at work. And, but I got away with it because nobody knew what mental health looked like. So then it turned out I was so fearful of being fired, but then my last interview pretty much was Donald Trump. And I thought after that, I've got to really shovel together what was left of my mind. And it started to show on TV. I get like these bouts of aggression or loss of the ability to figure out, when you can't make decisions. I think it started to show. So, but coincidentally, at the same time, I've said this in my book, is that comic relief put a poster of me without asking me up and down the tube station. These giant posters that said, without asking me, and it said on it, 1 in 4 people have mental illness, 1 in 5 people have dandruff, I have both. And so the first I see of it is going up and down the tube station. So I was mortified and I thought, oh, what am I going to do? So I decided I would use that as my publicity poster and pretend I was doing a show. So I had to write a show, and then I did it in mental institutions for 2 years, and then and they liked it. I loved it. Those were my people. So, I felt I was with my tribe. And I used to make jokes. I used to say, the bipolars would say I laughed, I cried. I would make jokes, but they didn't mind because, you can make jokes about your own ilk and then they don't feel insulted. So what happened was then, I don't remember how it happened. The show went to different real theaters. And now people who used to think my behavior was strange went, oh, Jennifer Saunders said, I was the one I think that told you to perk up. Because I said, people telling people with mental illness to perk up, because we never thought of that. And now once you have a show, nobody can touch you because it's your show. So I had a lucky break. And then I started getting interested in the mind and how we could maybe take over the driver's seat. That doesn't mean you cure yourself of depression, but you could see when it's coming. You get some forewarning, and that's when I started looking. Because I'd done therapy for 15 years. I had a degree in psychotherapy, but clearly, stuff works at a certain time, and then you grow up, and other things don't, it just doesn't work. It's like medication. It wears off, or you get an immunity. So my last stop was mindfulness, and I thought that sounded pretty dream catchery. But I did it while I was in an institution. And you can't really do mindfulness when you're mentally ill because you haven't got a mind. But I thought there is something to this. I don't know how I got that, but I said, who's the guy who invented this? And they said, Mark Williams, who I'm supposed to talk to later today. He was one of the 3 who invented it for depression. And he was at Oxford, so I went to see him. And I think out of the kindness of his heart, he taught me the 8-week mindfulness course. And then I said, but I want to know what happens in the brain because I'm very practical. You know, I'm not spiritual, I'm practical. Who knows? The lines are blurred. And he said, you have to get into Oxford. So then I did, and I got my master's. So people say, oh, it wasn't a spiritual thing. It was a science quest to know what happens in the brain during mindfulness. And so ever since, I'm one of the people that it works for. And there is no miracle, but I have to go to that gym, that brain gym every day. And I can tell more or less, nothing's 100, when a depression's coming, and then I can duck some of the bullets, meaning I know when it's coming, and then I can shut myself in, turn off social media, not do what mentally ill people do, which is they start doing more to cover up the fact that something's wrong. So I really know when something's wrong. So that was the journey. And then the Queen gave me an OBE for being mentally ill, and I thought, oh, I'm onto something here. See, if you've got a disease, use it.
Perks.
Yeah, perks.
So, how did your mental health manifest itself? The poor mental health, was it predominantly depression?
Yeah, I really have bipolar. I have, where the floor's taken out from under you, and then you become, the word is gormless, and whoever you were is gone, completely gone. It's, and it's not sadness, it's not anxiety, it's not, you've just left town, and there's nothing left who you used to be. So to say, pull yourself together, I always say, it's like saying to somebody with Alzheimer's, oh, come on, you remember where you parked your car. It's an illness. I wish they wouldn't confuse it with anxiety, so anyway, yeah, I couldn't, people say, oh, well, could you work? And I go, could I work? Can you do the marathon with an amputated leg? So I really became an advocate to try and change people's attitude. And now if they don't know that there's really a thing called mental illness, then they should be burnt at the stake the way we used to be.
And sorry, you mentioned mindfulness. So what's for someone who's a bit, let's say the lay person, what's your sort of definition of mindfulness?
There isn't a one sentence thing. It's like saying when you tell people to go to the gym and get a 6-pack, and if you said you lie on the floor, then you get up, then you lie down, then you get up, they would look at you like you're nuts. But there are exercises, and it's not Sudoku, and it's not, it's a little more sophisticated. You're exercising the amygdala and the insula, which means you're going from the thinking mind to the sensing, thinking mind to the sensing. And that's not hard at all. We all are in control of focus. It means you listen to the thoughts and then maybe go to breathing or listening to sound, letting the thoughts coming back. And each time you do that, that part of your brain that's more in charge of sensing gets stronger like a muscle, so that you have more of an anchor. When the stress comes in, you know it, because now you know the weather conditions of your mind. You cannot shut it off, but you have this stronger muscle to be able to understand these are just thoughts. I don't have to be snared by them. And sometimes you are, but you understand when you're agitated, the thoughts come in faster, and usually they're more vicious. And so you sort of sit back and wait for the storm to blow. But don't think you don't feel the storm. You feel it. But there's a little bit of you watching emotions rather than being in the headwinds. So it's an exercise that you don't do all day. You do it as, you could do it 1 minute a day, but it already changes the physiology of your brain.
Barbara, is it all right if I just kind of go in and just ask Ruby, ask you a little bit more about mindfulness? Thank you for kind of what you've shared and also your journey. But given that we're here today to talk about the mental health and well-being of health and care staff, anything practically you can share that would help people to use mindfulness or adopt mindfulness to help them in kind of everyday life?
Well, let's do two things. People go, I don't have time. Well, in England, people when I got here, weren't even brushing their teeth. Now everybody's in the gym. But, the more information comes out, you'll understand that, and this, the brain and the body are a onesie. So it behooves you to do a little something. You could do Tai Chi, you could do certain types of yoga, martial arts. Anytime you start to learn how to take the focus into the body, you're already being able to regulate your cortisol. Now, if somebody doesn't want to do mindfulness, you can't make them do it. But if the nurses or whatever want to listen to Headspace, it's sort of like training wheels. You can read Mark Williams' book. You could read my book. You could listen to tapes because it's much easier in the beginning to have somebody talk you through it. But don't go to one of these sham artists. You go to John Kabat-Zinn, Mark Williams, Jack Kornfield. And by the way, these are free. Okay? So you're not dealing with New Age. And Jack Kornfield has one that's free, and it's 5 minutes a day. It's on Insight Timer, and he does 5 minutes a day. But usually I do talks where I explain what it is, and I give people a taste of what it is. But if you're dealing with frontline workers, the other thing that controls the cortisol is by teamwork. I run Frazzle cafes, which you're all welcome to come on, that are free, where this is not mental illness again. It's our brains are now stressed about stress. These endless stories, which is a new disease. They didn't do this before. You're just stressed or you're anxious. That's easier to deal with. But the stories we tell ourselves. So what Frazzled is where, all different ethnicities, different ages, they come on and they really just are able to tell me the weather condition. It's got a format of their minds. Now, if you if you get a space where people aren't doing small talk, but have a chance to really show their vulnerability, and it's another way to get the cortisol down, because when we bond, and you guys are in the medical profession, the minute you bond with other human beings, we regulate each other. We work like neural Wi-Fi. If you're anxious, I'll pick it up. So when people are really caring about each other and, listening and not distracted, and what's interesting on Zoom is nobody's distracted because you're on it. If you get together and you have a space where you can talk as humans, the way Quakers did, or, when people had community, you will be able to get each other's heartbeat down. But if you don't take the time and everybody keeps going, and I know how many hours you work, and then you go, oh my God, I can't take it, and the story starts to accept, you'll burn out and you're no good to anybody. I mean, that's ultimately it. We can only work so many hours, and then you get brain fog. And when you do it, but because we're in a culture where you're not supposed to have any weaknesses, and oh yeah, we can buck up and take it. That's why so many people are A, having breakdowns, B, unable to work, C, committing suicide. How long do you want me, you know that. You're no good to anybody. You'll make mistakes. And nurses, national health is compassion. So you're going to get compassion fatigue if you try to put it out. Meanwhile, you're drained. So either come to my Frazzle, or we could work with you, only because we have a format and it's been going for years. You can't just have a space and everybody talks. That's just a mess. And we really weed out people who are in trouble, so that there's a distinction between frazzled and overwork and mental illness. We help people go where they need help. So if you're already mentally ill and you have it in your genes, you can't develop mental illness, but you can develop anxiety and trauma. We tell them where to go. And so you got to create a safe space where people can be vulnerable. And that passes like wildfire. When somebody opens their mouth and they're honest, that's what humans do when we work as a team. So, but something has to be done. There is no top tip. People go, is there a top tip? Yeah, go eat some grapefruits. What do you want? Give me a top tip for getting physically fit. Okay, well, open the door and start running. And you might have a heart attack. So it's more complicated. You have to do an exercise. Otherwise, you wouldn't be burning out. But if you're a natural, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Some people really thrive on stress, but then they shouldn't be having this conversation. But most of us can't take it, especially in the NHS. talk about the front line of trauma. So I don't know how you do it, but please come to Frazzled. It's free, or talk to me about how to create one in your environment.
Thank you, Ruby. No, that's really, really helpful, because I think what you're talking about is, as I think the risk is that there is this notion there is one thing. Okay, just do that and it'll be okay. And actually, you're talking about there's so many different layers. And what's interesting is you've written so much about neuroscience and the kind of the evolution of our brains, and how that helps us to kind of live a better life and manage what it is to be, to be human. And it would be really helpful for you to just say just something about the neuroscience lens would be really helpful.
Well, the neuroscience lens on what happens when you pass your threshold.
Yeah.
I mean, my show, stress, we need stress, and you're medically trained, is that otherwise we wouldn't have survived. I mean, I try to give examples, in the past, everything back in time in evolution was there for a reason. That's the gift of, what Darwin's survival of the fittest. And he didn't mean the toughest. He meant those who cooperate the best. That's what survival of the fittest meant. And it was just reinterpreted by industrialists who wanted to say, oh yeah, we're supposed to exploit the poor. But anyway, so we need the stress, right? But what happens, let's say, when you're attacked by a saber-toothed tiger is the amygdala, your alarm bell activates, you're gushing cortisol, and you need it, right? It's fight or flight. It takes out your blood pressure lowers, your pupils dilate. You need that high blood pressure to get out of there or take it on. But what happens when the incident's over? Everything goes back to calm. It's homeostatic. But, your body knows how to do that. It's like, the miracle of it. It knows how to go back to its flatline, not flatline, that's the wrong word, but, homeostatic state. But the problem is we live in a culture now, and now don't get into, oh, it's my fault, but I think this made me feel better, is we live in a culture, however we got here, okay, that the news never shuts off. So our brain, the amygdala, it doesn't know if there's something about to attack you behind it or something's happening 20,000 miles away. And because we're creatures of addiction, and let's talk about, part of us is still pretty primitive, we get addicted to the adrenaline kick. So now we're just not being assaulted by it, we're looking for it. That's why there's 24 hours worth of news, and it's getting more and more horrific. Then, every advertiser has our eyeballs and data. They call it stealing eyeballs. They know what we like, and they know how to show it to us. It's so sophisticated that it's out of our control. They're not ads anymore. It's brainwashing, and they know how to make you shop, and they're promising if you get this, you'll be happy. So now it's become another addiction. Then and I'm not saying get rid of social media or tech. It's there, but understand how it works, and like how the brain works is envy and wanting to fit in with the crowd are very primitive needs of humans, and they're playing on it. And we're supposed to compete, we're supposed to feel envy, but we felt it when we were in tribes, and that meant you'd step up to the plate for the sake of the tribe, and that's what I was talking about, community. Now, if you're competing with the rest of the world, you're never going to come in first as to who's the most successful. And we're lying to each other to say I'm successful. And now of course, you get a recording of I'm not good enough. And every time you get a recording, you're in a high state of alarm. A predator might as well be eating you. So we never calm down. And when the neuroscience is when there's too much cortisol that isn't in your head, it pinballs down to the adrenal gland. Down here is what gushes it. And like a pinball machine, it takes out every organ, and eventually your immune system goes. So when people go, oh, it's just mental. Okay, now imagine we need our immune systems, but if that's down, we got cancers, diabetes 2, obesity, infertility, heart disease, ulcers, premature aging, dementia. All of this comes from too much cortisol. Also, it comes from, genes, But now they know come from epigenetics that the genes can change. So you can't anymore say, this is the way I am. Certain things like Huntington disease or whatever, there's nothing you can do. But you really can, if you make that body resilient, meaning the brain, you can start to, work a little bit against it. And that's science. And that's science. It isn't because you waved a crystal. You had to do the exercise. If you don't, look, somebody may know how to cool their cortisol by stroking their cat or doing, something. Well, then just do that. But the thing about mindfulness and the thing about Tai Chi is it's an exercise where you're not just calming yourself down, because some people say, oh, I'm calm when I'm jogging, or I'm calm if I go scuba diving. But when somebody's shouting at you or you're working for 12 hours, you can't go scuba diving. So with mindfulness, you learn, okay, I understand I'm at number 10 now, because you're reading your own temperature and you're going to break, okay? And the voice isn't going because you're lazy. You're starting to train the self-compassion. So now you have a choice. You can have a heart attack, or you can go say, I'm going to the loo, and practice the reason for the breathing, not just breathing. The reason is because you bring down the cortisol. It goes up again, you bring it down, but you're strengthening your muscle. Even if you do it a minute a day, you stand more of a chance. And that's how it works. And the shit'll still hit the fan, and I'll still be envious, and I'll still know that I can't stop watching TV once it's on. I know this is my weakness, so I'm not near the TV.
Yeah.
But I don't feel shame when people go, hey, do you know how many people died? I go, really, I don't. But tell me, because I'm human and I want to know. But you know what I mean? It's like getting off of any drug.
Yeah, I'm really interested, Ruby, in that around, you said about how we're so surrounded by this like bad news and we're addicted to it at the moment. And you talked earlier about saying 1 in 4 people have mental illness on this big poster, and what we're seeing in the NHS at the moment, as you can imagine, is much higher than that. Lots and lots of people really suffering. And I really loved your book, And Now for the Good News, which is about, how we pay attention to this good news. And I just wondered, the timing of you publishing this book, you must have been a fortune teller, because I think it was published, was it the week of lockdown or something? Perfect timing.
I finished it, but when it came out, it wasn't the right time.
Oh.
So it's coming out again at Christmas. I think it was too early.
Okay.
The softback's going to come out. I think people need to have their cortisol down to understand what that book was.
Well, I was just wondering, because you've obviously done a lot of research and finding about these amazing things going on around the globe. Did it have an impact on you going into lockdown and COVID, having spent so much of your time focusing on these really positive stories?
Yeah, I did that so I could lower my cortisol. I mean, what I do now is everything, it has to feed it, otherwise I'll get sick again. It'll make me sick. So for 2 years, rather than to wean myself off the addiction of TV and this is before COVID. So in a way, I wish I'd been writing it during COVID, because for the 2 years prior, I was the happiest I've ever been. So I went to Findhorn, which is a community where people care about each other. And I went to lots of these intentional communities, and people roll their eyes. Oh, well, you have to be rich. Well, in South London, it's called Bedzed, and it's mostly Peabody Estate, but they have created that community. There's a community center. That's where people once a week have dinner. Old people take care of the kids. They all have a little vegetable patch. This is free. And you feel that they're taking care of each other. And there's ones in favelas in South Africa, and there's 10,000. So I think that's the future, as people start, and it's another way of getting the emissions down, if that's, So I got to do that. I got to work in businesses that were now adhering to conscious capitalism and don't think they don't make a fortune. And some of them are Ben and Jerry's, Dove, the Guardian Group. People are now starting to work, and that's teamwork too. They're changing the paradigm. So I worked at Patagonia Sportswear Company which is, I would have worked there in 2 minutes. It's been going 40 years. They're ethical like you wouldn't believe, but not up their own asses. The way they structure the buildings, they have schools for little kids between the buildings. They all have to work for an environmental cause. The whole ethos of their clothes is, don't buy one thing and never come back to us again. If anything rips or things, send it back, we'll fix it. You think that people aren't begging to get more, but it's not a ploy, they're the real deal. And then I got to go to Finland and watch how education's done. I had the privilege of watching this stuff, and then I also know where it is in the UK. So I've given you a book. You want to get happier? Take a look at this stuff and use some of their ideas. And then at the end, I give my favorite, not charities, but people that are doing the real deal, like Choose Love. And I went to Samos with them. You're not doing like charity where you do a dinner and spend more money than you could have done saving everybody. It's on the ground. You go there. I'm with these young people and they're building sewers and they're building showers. The money goes straight into what those people need. And these young kids, who are doing it, they're glowing with happiness. So I picked a few where you are doing a lot of them are doing the real thing. There's probably thousands, but I just picked my 3 favorites.
Well,
and if you do an act of kindness, you get oxytocin. There's no question. If you really want to feel good fast, here's a top tip. If somebody's homeless, you don't have to give them your money. Talk to them like they're human beings and watch how you feel. So,
well, I'm really glad you did do it before COVID. I don't know how you'd have managed all of that travel over the last year.
Couldn't have done it. I just think it would have been fun to write it during COVID, because when you're writing it, it comes back again. So I happened to finish it the day it started. So
it's one of the things I'm really seeing with leaders in the NHS at the moment, where you mentioned compassion fatigue, where these ethical businesses that are really working to improve the lives of the people working for them. And I think that the NHS really fits within that model, really, because our business is our purpose. It is not about profit, it's about health and well-being of patients and staff. But one of the things a lot of leaders are really facing at the moment is this complete burnout, this exhaustion and mental health impacts and everything. And a lot of the way that I'm seeing people trying to deal with it is this forced positivity, this understanding that we need to focus on the positive in order to motivate ourselves and other people. But a lot of the time it's forced. So I just wanted, the question I've got for you is, what advice would you give to leaders in the NHS to make this a sort of genuine focusing on the positive rather than painting the happy face on it?
Well, they have to do something. Empathy is where you just pick up somebody's emotions. Compassion is the action. So they have to do something. They have to create a community or get somebody in touch with me about Frazzled, or they teach mindfulness, or they get cognitive therapy out to everybody. But the reason things like mindfulness are around is you haven't got enough therapists. Or at least look when you see one of these, somebody in your job having a burnout, they can't work anymore, but keep paying them. But if you take somebody with mental illness and you make them work, first of all, they're going to make mistakes. So somebody has to say, nurses especially don't admit they have a mental illness for the same reason I didn't. You're scared you're going to lose your job, which is ironic, but you're going to hurt somebody if you keep working with those conditions. As wonderful as you are, as a human being, you can't take it. So somebody has to take it seriously. If you're destroyed, the whole world goes down the hole. What good are you? And they have to acknowledge the trauma of what just happened. We can't just go, oh, well, that was fine. I'm writing another book, which comes out in August, called Mindfulness Guide for Survival, which is exactly, we should have been prepared mentally for things like uncertainty, loneliness, change, because those are the human condition. What were we thinking? And so now we got to go back to the gym so that we understand there's certain things you cannot fight. So how do we deal with it? People were paralyzed in their houses. There will be another incident. So let's get ready for it. the NHS is the most important thing. If those leaders in there don't take care of you, then they really have a lot to answer for. You can't do this to people. You know, what good would you? I mean, you've done the most amazing thing on earth, but if somebody's getting ill, it's not fair.
And taking care of themselves as well. This self-compassion thing is often what we're seeing people not doing. It's that making time for their teams to take the time out and rest and develop and learn and have fun, but not doing it for themselves necessarily.
My girlfriend did. Her mother was a great therapist. She had a pin when the kids were small if she was not well, so that everybody wouldn't think it's their fault. She put, it was a porcupine, she put the nose down so that people could read on a mood. You know, if somebody isn't right, I wish they'd be able to, like it in communities, they say this, they don't have to go on, but I'm not right. You know what I mean? And you could show heading toward disaster, whatever. And as soon as you say that, other people will run to help you. You know, so you don't have, nobody has time, but if you had a little button that said, I'm in blue and black is next, then
This
people
sounds
would,
like a 1990s mood ring.
exactly, we'll bring it back. Or have a little room where the people can go and say, I'm not right, and not think, oh, they're shirking on their job. You can't just say, keep a smile on, because you'll go down faster, because the shame, when people go, you should be happy, you should whatever, the shame of that will make you iller than anything else, because we can't just snap out of it.
I love what you said actually around you acknowledge and you act. That is the fundamental of it. It's not hiding what's going on and how stressed people are, but it's acknowledging it and then acting on it.
And you'll be better, and you'll be better helpers, because people feel vulnerability. You know, if somebody's all perky and you're ill, it's horrible.
Oh, I just have one quick query. Stigma. Do you think stigma, we're going through the process we've been going through, is starting to reduce the levels of stigma, or is there still a long way to go for us? Stigma with mental health.
Well, we're having this conversation, so clearly stigma's fading to the back. I think there's been too many incidents, suicides, you know, people are starting to wake up. They didn't happen because somebody had a kidney infection. So if somebody still thinks mental health, then they must be living in the dark ages. Yeah.
So your frazzled cafes, do you get a lot of men, or is it
Oh no, it's more women. I have to be honest, but the men are, you know, get all ethnicities, all ages, and when they start to talk, it's heart, you know, your heart goes out. They're human, you know, they're just saying, you know, people are letting me down. I feel worthless. Friends that I felt I did a lot for suddenly aren't calling me back. You know, this locked in thing. And there's such a sweetness in them. There's such a sweetness when they start to say, they're not whining. Some of them are really funny sometimes, but they're being honest. So all borders break down. You know, there's no enemy on this.
That shows the value of creating a space and also giving people the sense of support within that space. I think it's something we could learn to do more within the NHS.
Well, we'd like to do stuff with the NHS. So let me know.
No, that's definite. Hello, Katrina.
So remember,
you're back.
We had a power cut and then I couldn't connect. So I've moved into another room with the dogs. So if there's barking, apologies.
Do people, are people, is there an awareness how many people are maybe suffering from, let's not call it a mental illness, because that's an illness, but from being frazzled and burning out in the NHS? Is there enough? Well, you see, we need to know that.
Yeah.
Somebody has to say, this many people are unable to work. You know, now.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
I think in some ways what COVID has done, and I know we've spoken about this in the team, haven't we? What COVID has done is it's really enabled us to identify a problem or you know, the mental health need that was absolutely there before COVID, but I think wasn't talked about because it's been so so stark and apparent and obviously come to the surface with COVID. There's been so much more mental health need, but it's really opened up the conversation. And we're now looking at the research. We know that this is affecting huge numbers of health and care staff. And we've, there's new mental health and wellbeing hubs, there's new services that have been created. And I've really noticed a change in the conversation, certainly in the teams that I'm working with around mental health. Actually, it can be spoken about now in a way that I don't think it was before. I don't know, Fee and Barbara, if you agree with me.
I think there's definitely still a level of, well, at least my perception, I will say, I'll own it. My perception is there's definitely still a level of stigma, because we've been mapping out sickness absence rates with NHS staff in different groups, and different groups have their own issues. But one of the ones that I was really interested in is people working often in portering jobs who are middle-aged white men, have very high sickness levels, and what the kind of most common reason is it's down to MSK or joint problems. Now, my strong suspicion, having worked, MSK is like joint problems, so musculoskeletal problems. So it's like back pain, knee pain, and I'm sure that a fair proportion of that really is true. But having worked in the field and having worked with that demographic for a long time, I strongly suspect that there are mental health issues and anxiety and depression and other things underlying it. But that group of people, along with many others, are probably less likely to say to their boss, I am really depressed and I need to take a bit of time off to look after myself. They're much more likely to say, I've injured my back.
Yeah. Well, because they have a weakness now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the mind is in charge of the body.
Yeah.
I know, but you set an example. And again, like, knowledge is power. If you understand about ulcers, and about, I'm sure there's facts about the effect of cortisol on bone development and arthritis, and doesn't stop it, but to say these are physical manifestations of things, and now doctors are saying, if somebody has certain high blood pressure, whatever, to take, get the stress down. They're not just saying start running. But you can't do everything. You can just take care of yourself. I mean, don't worry about them. It's like we set an example. If somebody steps up to the plate and says, I can't do this anymore, and here's why, and I know, I think eventually people, and if you've got a backup, it's not, again, that's the power of community. You'll get your way.
And I think, Ruby, that's absolutely right. And I think you were talking, Fee, about leadership and leaders and actually how they can step up and really do the modelling of that. But also, I really loved what you said earlier, Ruby, before I disappeared, which was about the onesie.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how you framed it, but the onesie between the kind of mind and the body, and this notion that, you've got the mind and, then you've got the body, which, of course, everything you're talking about is the opposite of that, actually. We are so interconnected, and as you said, sometimes people experience back pain might not even recognize the mental health struggles necessarily in such a direct way.
Yeah, but let's take care of the people who do first.
Yeah.
It's like people, who was I talking about? Oh, somebody was with Frazzled wanting to do it in Australia, whatever. And I said, no, we take care of here now so that it becomes stronger. Before you start spreading, oh, these people aren't aware of it. Well, we can't help everybody. I mean, that's part of compassion fatigue. Who can you help? The person who's, don't worry about it. Just get yourself better.
But then you have these wonderful things. So I, for my own health issues, I was in a pain clinic for 3 weeks of 3 days a week with mindfulness training, physio, all sorts of stuff. And it really focuses on the mental and emotional aspects of chronic pain as well. So, recognizing it's obviously going to be a much more of an open door when people are going to admit that they've got issues. But recognizing that with a lot of conditions, there's going to be a mental health element to it, and we can put things in place to support even for people who don't necessarily ask for it.
I mean, John Kabat-Zinn, who brought meditation from the East to the West was a molecular biologist, and it began with people who were suffering from chronic pain. So they weren't told they were doing mindfulness. It's called a mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so he worked with people with chronic pain, where they gave up on them at Massachusetts University Hospital. And then the proof was 40 years later, look what happened. He dealt with pain in a completely different way.
Yeah. And I think what's very positive is that our kind of IAPT, which is our psychological therapy services in the NHS, actually mindfulness, and it's the course that John Kabat-Zinn designed.
Yeah.
That kind of it's the mindfulness-based, cognitive therapy, which is what's being delivered in the NHS because it has such a strong evidence base for people that are, obviously the physical health side of it that you were mentioning, Fee, but also people that are struggling with mental health issues, which it's really come into the mainstream, which is brilliant. And even, I don't know, Fee and Barbara, whether you've mentioned it already, but you were talking about some of the resources, Ruby, but the England NHS Improvement have made available to staff, like Headspace. I think it's still available, isn't it, Fee?
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbara, and some other resources. So they are available and actually being quite well used.
And all of them are free. Go on. I mean, I meditate with Kabat-Zinn in the morning with one of his, they're free.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse.
Yeah. And you're right, if you just look on YouTube as well, it's all there, isn't it? You get
the real thing. Because if you start hearing that you Google music and you see an ocean, somebody's talking to you like this, that's not mindfulness. That's dream catcher land. But it will calm you down, no question, like a massage or, soothing things. But what you want to do is get a muscle in your brain so you have something. It isn't just about relaxing.
But I think I know we haven't got very much time left, but I was just going to, recognize that was probably one of the biggest things for me in coming into mindfulness, was expecting it to be about calm and still and being this Zen yogi on a cloud sort of thing. And particularly coming into it with chronic pain as well, that appreciation that mindfulness is sometimes just really hard about, that the amount of escaping we do from our current moment, and we sort of flee, whether it's to the future or the past or to the chocolate or to the whatever it is, and just being in that moment can be about the busyness and the stress and other things. So it's not just about seeking this calm moment. I just wonder, Ruby, as you came into this and you've really kind of dived into it head first, doing a master's and Oxford and all of those things, was there anything that was really surprising that impacted you particularly?
The scientific evidence, when you look in a brain scanner and you see deactivation of the amygdala, growth and, more white cells in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the bit of you that's associated with focus. So the focus becomes, you can hold attention longer. That's really impressive. But yeah, mindful, you got it. People, I talk about it and then they'll go, yeah, but my mind is so wild. And I go, are you listening? If you go to the gym and don't lift a barbell, nothing happens. So when the mind is as insane as it can be, and you can bring your focus to a breath, you're just holding a tougher barbell. If it's all, like light breezes, why would you bother doing it? If you had a naturally buff body, why would you go to the gym? So it's almost, and it's counterintuitive. I don't want to sit and look at this storm, but for 1 minute a day, if you don't look at it, it's going to get stronger. It's like smoking a cigarette. You're just going to smoke more. So you look at this horror, you take your focus to either the breath or to a sound or your feet on the ground, something physical. The horror show still goes on. You go to the breath, still going on, but you will notice, like with pain, it changes. That if you don't latch on to those thoughts, they're like Mark says, clouds in the sky. They're strong ones and it's turbulent and you will notice the human brain changes every second. It can't stay the same. So hold on to your hats. But, you know, if you expect serenity, and then of course, the longer you look at it, a part of you does start to, there's not serenity, but you can feel your heart coming down and yourself breathing again. But it's not bliss, you know.
Yeah, it's not the target, it's almost like the byproduct.
It's like you want to be able to live next to this thing, because that's the human mind. And the word is befriending it. So you go, oh yeah, that's that storm again. That's that not good enough. That's that, yeah, it keeps coming. I'm used to it. Some days you really are not good enough, but then a lot of times you think you're not and you really are. So you can't believe your thoughts.
I just wanted to ask you what you talked about previously, you know, and now for the good news. It was such a hopeful book, which I know we've already touched on, but I do think there's so many messages in there that I think would have relevance for what our, you know, what the health and care kind of community staff are going through at the moment. I mean, it was around a lens on the world, which, as I said, was about hope. Anything else, I think, as we're kind of moving towards the end of the conversation, any other reflections on that I think people can, I mean, hopefully going away and read your book, but kind of hear about moving forward?
I think a lot of businesses or, you know, organizations need to be restructured. And business isn't my area, but there is a chapter on business, and you get like the guys that are Paul Paulson or something used to be the head of Unilever. He's a messiah, you know, the way business has to go forward. So I can't take the bones of what's in that chapter and maybe apply it to the NHS. It's not about the money, it's about the mental health of people who work for it and feeling empowered, because you have to give people that they have meaning. And if you don't feel you have meaning, then something's wrong inside. They have to restructure it. And not just banging a pot and pan, but really understanding what you're doing.
That was something that really hit me when I was listening to books. I love audiobooks, and listening to your voice talking about it. And one of the aspects of how we manage change in the NHS, obviously it's lots and lots of organisations all doing their own thing and all managing programmes, and purpose is always at the heart of any model of change. And it's something I think, compared to a lot of other organisations, the NHS is quite good at, and it is very generally quite good at articulating the purpose of what we're doing here and what our organisation is about. And people who come to work have a really strong sense of purpose themselves. And actually what can then happen is they burn themselves out. And I think there has been evidence to show that the stronger sense of value base and purpose in your role, when you feel it's so important, is you can just end up working too hard. And it kind of occurred to me as a question around what happens where it kind of goes the other way. Not so much that people don't have a sense of purpose, but that sense of purpose is so strong it's leading them to burn out.
Yeah, that's, I think the purpose thing is when people are, you know, hammering nails to make a car, and then suddenly give them the environment, but you're already saving lives. So I think that your purpose has to be, you need to spend time with your family, you know, that you need to maybe get that 4.5-day week. So maybe you know, everything is, every human, every situation, like that's why mindfulness or whatever is a different interpretation for different people. So maybe kindness to the NHS would be to say, you have to spend a morning or whatever doing what you like. Go paint something, you know, go do something, but say, here's our gift back to you. You already have purpose. You don't have to follow that model. But some companies, I think, that I wrote about say, okay, this is for you. You go back to your kids, or you do this so that your brain can cool down. So that's what they need to concentrate on. You already have enough purpose.
I think that's absolutely right. It's the balance, isn't it? It's like with the mindfulness. It's not that your whole purpose is your work. Your purpose is everything, you know, that you care about. So it's recognizing
your mind, so that it's in prime functioning form for work and for your home. Yeah.
I think we've covered a range of really helpful and useful topics. And thank you, Ruby, for your honesty and openness, because I think that resonates with everybody, because I think we're all going through different levels of stress and intrusive thoughts and 101 different things, partly due to our, the workload, and it's just the pressures of life at the moment. So anything that makes us feel less alone or less weird about having these feelings is a godsend. So I just want to say thank you so much for that. And we will be speaking very soon about the Frazzles Cafe.
Yeah, get in touch with me and I'll put you in touch with the CEO of Frazzle. But if you go on, we have hosts doing it all day, but mine are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, usually around 5:30. And you go on frazzlecafe.org and you go straight in. So you can look at them. But please get in touch with me.
No, because I think it'd be,
Yeah.
I think you might be slightly overwhelmed with the response, but I think it's a great start for us as an organisation.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Really brilliant. Learned so much. It's been great. And I've got the onesie in my mind now. So thank you for that.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Fantastic session. Thank you.